Want to have some herbs indoors this season? Well, head over to your local hardware store and grab just a simple piece of wood. About 1 inch thick works. When you get it home, I went ahead and decided to paint mine. I wanted to have a little bit of color, and I also grabbed some brass knobs. Brass look, I should say. Next, I measured out how many plants I wanted hanging on this, and I thought 3 would be a good number. Then I took my drill and made some pilot holes for the knobs that I had gotten to use, and this made it really easy to then attach the knobs just using my hand, and you can use a screwdriver or a drill if you want it to go a little bit faster. Once I secured those knobs, I also added a hook onto the back that it could hang from. Now it was time for me to pot up my herbs. I ended up getting this large basil plant. So what I like to do is just use some simple mason jars, and you can put some rocks in the bottom if you want to make sure that you don't overwater and your plants develop root rot. But I decided to skip that step, thinking that I was going to use these up pretty quickly. I used some really heavy-duty twine to wrap around the lip of the mason jar and then just tied a knot in them and hung one on each knob. They slanted to the side naturally, which is great because they actually are pointed toward the light and toward the window.
I grabbed a free palette for this genius garden hack. I used a hammer to remove some of the boards carefully. I left the nails in the boards so that I could use them again. I made 3 rows with 3 boards tight together on the bottom row, 2 boards together in the middle, and 2 boards near the top. The palette was taller than I wanted, so I used a reciprocating saw to cut the extra off. I flipped the palette over and followed the same pattern with 3 boards together on the bottom, 2 in the middle, and 2 at the top. I used all the leftover boards from this palette, plus a couple extra scrap 1x4s. I cut more 1x4s to fill in the bottom of each section and secured it with 3 nails on the front, and then I flipped it over and I hammered in 3 nails on the back side. I gave the front a quick sand with 120 grit sandpaper using my palm sander. Next, I filled each section with soil and planted my favorite herbs. I used my Cricut to print stencils to paint labels for each section. When applying the stencil, I first sealed it with Mod Podge, and then I let it dry before painting with acrylic paint. Once the paint was near dry, I removed the vinyl and did some touch-ups with my black acrylic paint pen. And now I have the most beautiful herb garden that can also be hung on the wall. I hope this inspired you to create your own palette herb garden.
Springtime is upon us and the front of my house is not looking good. Now this is the hard part. We got to clear all of this out, so I got to work. Once I got all that done, I used a large rake to make sure it was level, and I moved the stepping stones. Once I get all of this clear, it's time to grab one 4x4x8 pressure treated board. And the reason I'm going pressure treated is because it's going to go into the ground, and that way it won't rot out. I'm going to cut this 8-foot board into 4 pieces, which is 2 feet each. Once I got all my 4 pieces, I'm going to grab some cedar fence pickets. These are 6 foot long, but I'm going to go ahead and cut off just the dog ears on them because I want a straight edge. I'm going to lay these out just like you see in the video here and put some deck screws. These are only 1.5 inches long, and that's all you need to hold them in place. Once I get one side all squared up and down, I'm going to go to the other side. We're going to make 2 exact copies of this, one for each of the long sides. Once I get these screws in, then it's time to put a second board. When these are together, they're going to be 12 inches in depth. And I want to make sure that I get them screwed in again on both sides. Now it's time to make the other ends. I'm going to go 30 inches on those cedar boards, cut those, and again I'm going to need 2 for each side, so a total of 4. I'm going to go ahead and get these started, lining these up with 2 screws on each end, and then I'll just put them right into the other side of the 4x4 picket. Once these are all in, we're going to go ahead and also do a second board, and that way we have our right depth. Once you get this in, it's actually very strong and easy to move. It's still lightweight. As you can see, we've got our 12-inch depth right here. Now, once all this is together, it's time to dig out where the posts are going to go. So I'm going to use a post hole digger and go in a couple of inches and get that nice and deep. I'm lucky the soil in my area is kind of nice to work with. Once I get that, I can put it in to keep the weed control. That's right, I'm going to use some cardboard. I just lay that down, put some soil on top. Now, the first thing I'm going to put is a filler in. This is not the kind that you're just going to plant directly into. So I just put about 3 bags in and laid it across the bottom right on top of the cardboard. Once I get all this in, now it's time to go to the garden soil. That is what has all the organics and you can plant directly into. I'm going to get 3 bags, fill this up all the way to the top because there will be some settling over the couple of months when spring and summer arrive. I'm going to use a rake to keep spreading it out, break up any large clods that come. I took this out of the garden. I'm going to transplant this. I'm going to put this in and this root is going to take off pretty good. Then it's time to put all the flowers in. I actually got these on sale at my local hardware store and it was great. Once I get all of these planted, then it's time to put the stepping stones back in place, and I was able to reuse some of the bark dust, but I'm going to put some new stuff down also. Then it's time for watering. We want those roots to take hold. Do you remember how bad that looked? Look at this. It turned out absolutely fabulous. It gives it a new look, and once I get some new bark dust down, it's going to look great. I think these cedar planters turned out just great, and you can also use them for a retaining wall. I hope you enjoyed this project and it motivates you to make your own planters. Thank you for watching Hometalk, and we'll catch you next time. I headed down to the hardware store, and I found some cedar fence pickets that are only $3 a piece. So I grabbed some and headed back to the house. Once I get those done, I'm going to cut a couple of these pieces at 20 inches. I'm going to need 3 of these. One's going to be a bottom and 2 sides, front and back. I'm also going to cut some 2-inch strips because these are going to be some supports. But wood glue is going to be your friend in this whole project because we're going to use some nails and everything, but glue is what really makes it hold together. Any part that you do, make sure you use the wood glue and the nails to hold it in place. These little support strips are going to be on the back of this project. Once I get those done, I'm going to glue along the edge on the bottom so they can join 2 pieces together. Once I get that glued up, I'm going to use these brad nails again, and they're only 1 inch long to hold it in place. 3, 4, or 5 is all you need for each side because once that glue sets up, it's going to be super strong. And don't go light. Use as much glue as you want, and if it drips out, just use a paper towel just to clean it up. Once I get the front and the back done, it's time to do the sides. What I can do is, again, using the wood glue, use it, and put the base in. And I'm going to make sure these sides get also some brad nails. Make sure you keep your hands out of the way, and if you don't have the brad nails, you can definitely use some little screws to hold it in place. Once I get this done, I need some drain holes, so I'm going to put 3 of them on the bottom. Once I get that done, I'm going to take a plastic bag or any kind of liner that is of your choosing, and I'm going to staple one side in place. Once I get that done, it's time to go ahead and push it and get it all the way in because we're going to need some spare. Go ahead and staple this side up also, and once you get that all done and stapled up, it's time to trim it. That way we can get it all nice and neat looking. But I took some 1-inch strips of these cedar fence and I wanted to make a trim around the whole box. So I mitered the joints at 45 degrees and put a little trim all the way around, again using the brad nails to hold it in place. Once I get that done, just a little bit of sanding makes it look really nice. The next step is to go ahead and take some angles and put those down with the screws that come with it. These are what it's going to hold it onto the side of the windows, but I don't have to drill into the side of the house. So once I do that, get the potting soil all in there and all even, then I'm going to plant my flowers. I want to make them look really nice. It doesn't take too much because they are going to get bigger. I'm going to make sure I have them all watered, and look at this. They go right into place. Nice, just sit there. And I didn't have to drill into the side of the house, into the stucco or the siding. And I think they turned out great. Can you believe that I built these planters for less than $8 a piece? And the great thing about using cedar is it is rot resistant and repels insects. I hope this inspired you to build your own DIY window planter box. Thanks for watching Home Talk, and we'll catch you next time.